Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to walk you through our setup for recording live drums here at the studio. So we're going to head into the live room here, or into the drum room, and look at all the mics and where they're positioned on the kit here. But before we dive into recording live drums here at the studio, if you are looking to dial in a repeatable workflow for getting professional sounding drum mixes, then I want you to go through my 3-step framework for mixing drums workshop. This workshop will walk you through my 3-step process that I use on almost every mix for getting professional sounding drum mixes right from your home studio. It is a 100% free to watch on demand video training, and you can get access to that by clicking the link below in the video description. Completely free and ready for you to watch on demand. Now let's jump into the drum room here and look at what we got set up for recording live drums. So here we are heading into the drum room here. Here's a full picture of the kit setup. You can see the overhead mics there. We'll discuss the room microphone over here as we come around the kit. But let's start here in front of the kit. Let me pull back the stool here so we can see what's going on with our kick drum here. We've got 2 mics on the kick drum here, one on the outside that you can see here, and then there's one going inside that we'll talk about in a moment. So our first mic here on the outside, well, actually our first mic in the chain is actually our kick drum mic. So our kick in mic. So let's look at that first. If we can get a shot going in here, so you can see our kick in mic there. It's about halfway into the kick drum, pointing at where the beater hits the front of the kick drum head. This is an AKG D112 microphone. It's a dynamic microphone. Like I said, it's about halfway into the kick drum at an angle, pointing directly at where the beater is striking the kick drum head. So that's our kick in mic there. I like the D112. It captures a lot of that nice attack on the top end from the beater striking the front of the head there. It doesn't get a lot of lows, but it catches enough lows that it sounds decent even if you use it by yourself, and it has a nice scoop in the low mids as well. Moving over here, our second mic in the chain. This is the kick out mic. This is, I'm not even sure what microphone this is. This is a cheap Sterling microphone. You used to be able to get this pack of microphones for like $50, and it came with this large diaphragm condenser and a small diaphragm condenser as well, a pencil condenser. You can probably see the name right there. It's S50, so just Sterling 50, I guess is what it was called. It's centered inside the kick here. You can see it's centered on the kick head, and it's about an inch or so away from the head. That way we capture some of that nice air coming off the head, but it's not too far back that you're going to hear like cymbal noise or what have you coming from the top of the kit here. Just catches nice low air coming off the front of the head. And you get some nice top end air too if you boost some of the top end, but you don't want to go too far. Obviously, you're going to get too much of the cymbal noise coming from above it. That is also why we use this guy here as well. Sometimes we'll put this in front of the kick drum and then drape a blanket over the kick drum as a whole. So there's a view of our kick drum as a whole there, 2 mics on it. Moving over, the next couple mics in the chain here are going to be around the kit here on the snare drum. So we'll have our 2 snare top mics, and you can see they're taped together here, pointing at the center of the snare drum. We've got classic SM57 here. And then this is that other Sterling mic that you just heard me talk about. This is the, I don't know, the S30, I think is what it's called. It's a small diaphragm condenser microphone. And it captures a lot of the nice top end crack, but it also gets some nice low end beef coming off the snare drum as well. So this gives us all that nice mid-range that you want, that mid-range crack that you're going to get from the snare drum with the classic SM57. And then the condenser gives us some nice top end shine as well as some low end beef on our snare drum. Now we used to use I can't remember what it was called. It was an electro voice microphone that we used to have here. C15 it might have been. They're very rare, and a lot of them that you get these days don't work, and that's what happened. We got one of them. It sounded really good in conjunction with the 57 here, but after a while it stopped working. So it's back in a box over in the mic cabinet over there. On the bottom now, if we can move around here, we have an Audix i5 here on the bottom of the snare. Now this is pretty much like a 57 clone made by Audix. They sound pretty similar, but I like what this gives more than a 57 on the bottom of the snare. Sometimes a 57 on the bottom of the snare gets too much of that mid-range, and it can feel brittle in that mid-range, that high mid, sometimes that 4K area. This seems to take it a little bit better than a 57 would, which is why I put it on guitar amps too sometimes instead of a 57. It takes that 4K area a little bit better, I think. Oh, moving over, now we have our toms are next in the chain. So we have this high tom here. Now all the other toms you can see are using Sennheiser microphones, 420 microphones, but this guy here is just using a Shure. It's a PG50, what does it say? PG56 there on the microphone. This is just a cheap Shure microphone pack that you can get. And it comes with a bunch of drum microphones as well as a kick drum microphone. Now we used to use the kick drum microphone on the snare as well, just by itself because of how fat it was. But that microphone got busted as well after a while, which you tend to get with cheap microphones. They don't last very long. But this guy I have on the high tom because we don't need so much low end from it, and because you can see it's between two cymbals here. So using that bulky Sennheiser microphone doesn't work very well there. So moving over now, you can see we have the Sennheiser microphones across the toms here. These are all just pointing at the center of the drum, only about, I like to say about a finger's length away from the drum, so about above it, and then pointing at the center of the drum for all of them. Now this one here, I would like to have pointing in, but you can see our ride comes over the kit a little bit, so sometimes you have to make compromises when you're miking drums, but still about finger's length away from the drum, pointing at the center of the kit here. And with the tom microphone, now I like to have it pointing, you can see where our cymbals are, and you can see our microphone's pointing away from all the cymbals. So it's pointing in at our drummer here, you can see where our drummer sits, but it's pointing away from all the cymbals, and you can see it's not pointing at our hi-hat either, trying to minimize the cymbal noise we get from our low floor tom there. So that's our kick, snare, our toms there. Now moving over, let me move back here to the front of the kit. You can see where our overheads are. These are SM57s we're actually using for overheads here, and you'll see why as we get into the DAW and look at the plugins that we're running on the board and inside the DAW here. These 57s here are actually running through the Antares mic modeler, so they're not actually 57s when we get to the end of the day here, but up here in the studio, two 57s, and they are measured 47 inches away from the center of the snare drum. So that one's sitting over our hi-hat there. This guy's sitting more over our ride cymbal and the stack of cymbals on the right side of the drum kit. But yep, 47 inches away from the center of the snare. That's so when the drummer hits the snare, that's our center picture of the kit, and the sound from the snare is going to hit both overheads at the same time. So it's going to be in phase there. Both overheads will. Moving around now, in the front of the room here, we have the vocal microphone. Now, the vocal microphone I actually just turn on and leave as is. This is the Slate Digital virtual microphone. This is the VM1, I think. The VM2 or VML2 is the small diaphragm condenser. But the big diaphragm condenser, what we use on vocals here in the studio most of the time, unless we're using the Lewitt microphone. But I leave this up and I turn it on, I model it as a 47 and run it as the room microphone here, just to get that mono room. Not using stereo rooms here inside the studio. We use the virtual emulation in IR to get a stereo room sound later. I like to stay as small as possible. You can see how small the room is. It's a little bedroom here, a one bedroom that we've converted into the drum room here. So it's pretty small sounding. I'd rather have a small, drier sound and be able to make it bigger later inside the DAW than have too big of a sound and trying to make it sound smaller. That's always a little bit more difficult. Back inside the DAW here, you can see all of our tracks loaded up that we were recording in there. So this is our kick in mic. This is that AKG D112 that you saw inside the kick. This is our kick out microphone. This is that Sterling S50 microphone, that large diaphragm condenser, centered right in the front of the head there, about an inch away. This is the snare top. This is the SM57 microphone pointing right at the center of the snare. This was that microphone that's taped to it This is the Sterling S30, I believe is what it's called. Like I said, we used to use that Electro Voice S for C15 or whatever it's called. I can't remember exactly what the name is these days. And then this is the snare bottom. This is that Audix i5 you saw underneath the snare. Here are our tom microphones. These are the Sennheiser 420s, as well as that PG56, that Shure microphone on the high tom here. Moving over, these are our overhead microphones. So these are the SM57s that you saw above the kit there, and they're running into the Antares mic modeler, so you can see Shure SM57s, and they're coming out as Neumann U87s on the back end there. So using the mic modeler to our advantage there, so we don't have to have a pair of $4,000 microphones over the kit 24/7. Here's the room microphone. So this is that Slate Digital microphone, the VML1. And you can see it's being modeled as a 47. Yes, almost forgot what it's called. Neumann 47, a U47 here. And then it's running through that FG73 as well for some preamp modeling on the back end. Those are all our microphones there. And then here's the stereo room that we talked about. This is the Bricasti Close. It's just Studio B from the Bricasti unit, and I've lowered it to about 400 milliseconds there. So all of the spot mics are sending there, as well as the overheads, to give us a stereo room on the back end. So if we're going through here now, let's look at the processing we're doing on the way in for all of these mics here. So here's our kick in. If we scroll up, you can see our kick in mic here. We got a little bit of equalization, and then we have our compressor as well. So the equalizer we're using this API 550 style emulation. You can see we're pulling down all the 800 that we can, so negative 12 dB at 800. We've got a 4 dB boost at 50 hertz here, and then we've got a 4 dB boost at 7K here on the equalizer. So I'll let you hear what that sounds like, and you can see what the compressor is doing as well here for our kick-in mic. Compressor, we're using this DBX 160 emulation, 2-to-1 ratio. You can see we're doing about 6 dB reduction on those bigger hits there, and then got 2 dB of makeup gain as well. Just cutting all that nastiness in the higher mid-range there. The D112 does a great job of pulling out all that low mid energy, so we don't have to scoop that 400 hertz area, but sometimes it can get boxy sounding or basketball sounding at that 800 hertz area, so we can pull all 12 dB that out. Boosting a little bit extra low end than we need to. We're going to get a lot of low end from this kick out mic here. So we'll move over. Here's our kick out microphone. This is that Sterling microphone. You can see we're doing kind of the same moves here. Boosting 4 dB at 50 hertz. That's all that low end air we're going to get. Now we're cutting all this 400 hertz. So 9 dB down at 400 hertz. Pulling out all that low mid energy. We don't need any of that, especially coming from the front end of the kick drum, the kick out mic. And then we're boosting 6 dB at 10K here, so bringing up that nice air on our kick drum. Same compressor we got running here, doing probably about the same amount of compression, 6 dB compression at a 2-to-1 ratio. So let me play you this. You can hear what the EQ sounds like, as well as you can see what our compressor is doing on our kick out mic here. Same 6 dB of compression there, 2 dB of makeup gain on this unit. Love it on kick drum. It does a really good job of controlling some of those bigger hits without feeling too attack oriented or feeling like it's squashing the kick drum too much. I do love this microphone, even though it is a cheapo microphone. I would love to have like a U47 on the front of the kick drum. I mean, who wouldn't have loved to have a U47 as their kick out mic? But this microphone is very, very sweet and very, very gentle sounding. It captures that air coming off the front of the head very, very well for the low end and for the top end there. You can see that's a very sweet 10K boost on our kick drum. Here's our kick drum as a whole, so our kick in and our kick out. Sounds really, really good. Those two mics work together very well. Moving over now, we have our snare top. So this is the 57 pointing at the center of the snare. Using the same API EQ here. I do love this Alpine 550 EQ. Any API 550 style EQ works wonders when you're recording drums. And that's running into an 1176 style emulation, or the FET comp here inside of Studio One. Doing about 3 dB of compression on these bigger hits here. Our attack is at about 0.55 milliseconds, and then fastest release here. I love using this compressor, doing that 3 dB reduction on snare. It helps bring out some of the attack as well on snare drum. So you can see what we're doing here. We're boosting 2 dB at 100 hertz, so bringing up some of that bottom end on the snare, some of that lower octave, and then 4 dB at 5K. Nothing on the mid-range. I'm always weary of cutting mid-range on snare drum because it feels like it can neuter the sound of the snare drum. So let me hit play here. You can hear what our snare top sounds like. So you can just catching some of those peaks there on the louder parts of the snare, and then doing maybe a dB and a half of reduction on some of these more gentler sections. Here's our snare high mic. You can see how far down I keep this. It just adds that extra air on the top end and then extra low end beef. So this is that other Sterling microphone, the small diaphragm condenser that's taped to the 57. Doing similar moves here. We're down at 50 hertz actually here on this. We'll have to see that. I don't remember doing that. 2 dB boost at 50 hertz and a 4 dB boost at 5K here, using that same 1176 to emphasize some of that attack. So take a listen to this. This is that Sterling microphone. Not sure why I did that 50 hertz boost, but it sounds really tasty down there in the low end. Brings up some of the kick as well, which is pretty sweet. Those are our snare top microphones there. Moving over, here's our snare bottom microphone. So this is that Audix i5. Same kind of processing you'll see. We're up at 10K here though. 2 dB at 10K, 2 dB at 100 hertz here. So kind of mimic our snare top 57. And same 1176 here on the bottom, doing that same kind of compression, emphasizing some of that attack. But because I said the Audix i5 takes that top end a little bit better, you can see we're boosting a little bit higher with that 10K boost there. So here's our bottom mic. You can hear how sweet that 10K boost is. That Audix mic takes the top end really, really well coming off the bottom snare. So that's our snare drum. Here's all 3 mics together, balanced for our snare drum. So the 57, the Sterling microphone, and the Audix i5. Toms here, there's no processing across any of the toms here because the Sennheiser mics sound so good. I don't do anything to them. I leave them right as they are and then just EQ them when it comes mix time. So let me play you this fill going into the chorus here on the toms. Unfortunately, he doesn't hit the high tom at all throughout this song, but that's okay. Not a big deal there. You can hear these Sennheiser mics as he rolls across the toms here. And they're just panned. Highest rack toms 30% right, then center, 30% left, and 60% left. So here's our tom mics. You can hear how smooth those mics sound on the toms. They capture the low end really, really well, and they capture that nice top end stick attack very, very well, which is why I love them, and I don't do anything to them on the way in. I could boost some top end with the API, boost some low end, but they sound really, really great, and I find I don't have to do much on the way in, usually just a little bit during mixing, and they sound fine. Overheads here now, you can hear the difference with the mic modeler. So again, we were using 57s on the overheads, and then they're just running into the mic modeler here to be modeled as Neumann U87. So you can hear with and without the mic modeler here. I'll start without it so you can hear, excuse me, the raw 57 sound, and then I'll kick it in. You can hear what it sounds like as 87. So here's our overheads. Quite a difference there, and it really helps to beef up our kit a little bit and roll off some of the brittle edges of some of the cymbals. Sometimes when you're riding on that bell, it can get a little brittle and a little bit harsh for the ear, a little bit pokey, and 57s don't take that frequency so well. So running it through the mic modeler to put them as 87s rolls off some of those harsher edges and gives us more weight in the bottom end to give us a better full picture of the kit there. Last mic we had here was the room microphone, the mono room microphone. And again, this is that Slate VML1, just being modeled as a 47 here. And then I have an EQ after it rolling off the cymbal noise on the top end. So this is just the bottom end and the mid-range rolling off the top end here. That is all our microphones there. So let me pop all of them in, and then the last thing I'll do is I'll throw in the room emulation, the stereo room emulation here on the end, and you can hear our full recorded drum sound. So here's our kick drum, snare, toms, overheads, room, and I'll throw in the stereo room here in a second. You can get a picture of our full finished live drum recording. And that's our setup for recording live drums here at the studio. 2 mics on kick, 3 on snare. We got a mic on each of the 4 toms, stereo overheads running through the mic modeler, and then we have our mono room mic running into the virtual mix rack there to model as a 47, as well as bringing up the Bricasti room emulation from the Bricasti Close there, the Simplicity pack, to give us that stereo room emulation on the back end there. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to level up your drum mixes and start dialing in a repeatable workflow for getting professional sounding drum mixes, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 3-step framework for mixing drums workshop, and you can get completely free access to it by clicking the link below in the video description. Thank you so much for watching here today, and I will see you in the next video.